The Pokemon Game Boy game recreates the base fossil format, known for powerful basic Pokemon like Hitmonchan and Electabuzz, backed up by the game's strongest trainer card, Professor Oak, which lacks the once per turn restriction of its modern counterparts. But these common cards share a trait in common. They're not common. Rather, they're uncommons and rares. I set out to beat the game without using any of these cards. So, what do the commons of the base fossil era look like? To start, nearly every evolution Pokemon is at least uncommon, so we're not able to use any of them. However, cards like Machop and Pikachu share key traits with the titans of the format, keeping competitive damage output at the cost of some HP and other positive traits. Alongside cards like Staryu and Ponyta, my plan was simple: run things over with weakness before the opponent can set up and capitalize on my weaknesses. This makeshift Haymaker deck is surprisingly coherent. We're lacking several key cards, so it's not good, but it is better than you may expect thanks to some surprising low-rarity staples. That said, I'm not grinding, so it'll be up to luck if and when I pull them. I start out by picking the Charmander deck to get access to Ember. We set off to the Grass Club and lose immediately. Brittany sweeps us with my favorite grass-type Pokemon, Magmar, but we adjust our deck and bounce back using the prize packs from the other two trainers in the gym. We go to fight the Club Master Nikki, and then our webcam breaks and the internet cuts off, interrupting the stream. Nevertheless, I proceed with the battle. We start with Machop, which softens up an Execute for Pikachu. The 30 damage per turn from Thunder Jolt applies a ton of pressure while I set up a Charmander on the bench, which comes in and picks up KOs against another Execute and an Exeggutor with no sweat. I still have 2 prize cards remaining, but they run out of bench Pokemon, and that's the first medal down. Next up is the Science Club, which uses poison types alongside Pokemon like Mewtwo and Porygon. The grunts fold like a level shuffled max rarity deck, so we move on to Rick. We lead Diglett against Mewtwo, and after making sure it doesn't resist fighting, we power it up for a quick KO. They bounce back with Grimer, but Pikachu lands 2 heads of Thunder Jolt and takes it out with minimal damage. Wheezing Smog evens it up and actually poses a big threat, but I'm pretty sure that AI takes any KO available, so I bait it into using Explosion by bringing out Ponyta. The bench damage allows Charmander to KO Grimer the next turn, finally giving me a positional lead. Rattata has a Psychic Resist, so I bring it in against their second Mewtwo and start using Bite. After a couple more turns, Charmander KOs a Grimer for game. There's actually a rival fight after this, but the prize for winning is a promo card, which, according to my sources, is not common. That means we can move on to the Fire Club. The gym trainers here give me a surprisingly tough time, with cards like Tauros and Charizard both stealing a game. However, I managed to take them all out on my second attempt, so let's move on to Ken. I start with Machop and Staryu, but predict Ken is going to lead a normal type. It pays off with a turn 1 low kick against Jigglypuff. Not quite enough to score a KO, but it forces a retreat into Growlithe that can't attack. After chipping it, I KO it with Staryu, and then switch back the next turn to start poking away at a Chansey with Machop. It eventually retreats as well, so we dance around some more, and I KO a second Growlithe, followed by Jigglypuff for a 3 prize lead. His Magmar is the first threatening Pokemon to come out, but it doesn't have any energy on it, giving me time to weaken it with Machop and give Staryu its 3rd KO this game. Chansey comes back in and stalls with Scrunch before ultimately deciding to KO itself with Double Edge, letting me take my final prize card with Magnemite's Self-Destruct. The 4th club uses water types, which gives us an interesting decision. You see, in addition to the Pikachu we've been using, there's also a second one from Jungle. It has 10 more HP and can deal damage to the bench while still picking up a 1-hit KO on Squirtle. I ultimately ended up valuing access to a 1 energy attack more, but I'm not sure it's the optimal call. As an aside, most of the gym trainers in this game use a 4 prize format, but the water trainers only use 2 and 3 for some reason. I wonder if it's meant to symbolize that swimming is their main hobby and Pokemon's just what they do on the side. Amy runs a Rain Dance deck, which viewers may know is an actual competitive threat from the era. Her list certainly isn't optimized, but Lapras is a pain to deal with. It completely overwhelms me in the first game, and then sweeps us again on the run back. 3rd time's the charm, right? Staryu starts off against another Lapras, but after several turns of chipping away, I'm able to bring in Jigglypuff and take it out. Amy gets out Seaking, so I bring in my Magnemite for a KO. Amy has the 2nd Lapras, so I have to sacrifice a Staryu to buy time while I power up a 2nd Magnemite. I'm in a bad spot, but the bench damage from the Magnemite lets me pick up 2 KOs on damaged Horsey and close out the game. It's a good thing that Amy ran out of steam after the 2 Lapras went away. The FCs part ways as we get our 4th medal and defeat the Lightning Club trainers with no sweat, including one that only actually used grass types during our battle. the Clubmaster similarly didn't pose much of a threat. Jigglypuff took an early KO, and despite having 2 energy on Magnemite, they attach a DCE before blowing it up. Thanks to Diglett's lightning resistance, it's more or less invincible, and it's able to take out the rest of Isaac's Pokemon. The Psychic Club is up next, and I'm able to challenge the leader immediately without fighting the other trainers. The game goes on for a long time, but their Ace Alakazam only deals 30 damage, allowing Rattata to stall indefinitely until Murray decked out. It wasn't how I was planning to win, but I'll take it. And unfortunately, that's going to be where Rattata stops being useful. The remaining 2 clubs use Rock and Fighting Pokemon, which will hit Rattata for weakness. After changing up my deck, I take on the 7th Clubmaster. I start with Machop and trade blows with a Diglett, using potions to extend my longevity. After taking 2 KOs, I switch out for Tangela, which hits for weakness and runs through the rest of his team. This was possibly the easiest Clubmaster of them all, and it made me think that Amy was just a random difficulty spike. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The final club uses fighting types, which means dealing with Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. My Pokemon all only have 40 or 50 HP, so once one of these gets set up, it's game over, as they're able to just one-hit KO everything I can throw at them. I struggle not just with the Clubmaster, but with all of the pupils as well. My first attempt against the Grandmaster involves Hitmonlee getting set up and sweeping my entire team. However, on the second try, I draw multiple copies of energy removal, and by stopping Hitmonlee from attacking for several turns, I run Mitch out of energy, and so it's just a matter of time to clean up the rest of their bench. We cleared all 8 clubs and prepare to take on the Grandmasters. I wanted to use a single deck for all 4, but promptly getting sent packing by Courtney made me reconsider. Up until this point, we've relied on hitting for weakness and muscling through opponents before they can evolve, but the legendary cards are all basics with no weakness and a fighting resist, rendering Machop and Diglett useless. High attack costs and random effects make these cards not very good, but they happen to do well against the strategies we've relied on so far. On my 3rd Courtney run, I finally open up with a water Pokemon. Psyduck flips enough heads to KO Vulpix, then soldiers on to KO a Magmar with the help of energy removal. Moltres comes in, but we dodge multiple dive bombs and take out a Growlithe afterwards for game. Steve gets swift revenge with their Zapdos, but our next game is much more interesting. They open Voltorb, so we take a turn 1 KO with Machop. Zapdos comes in, but it'll take several turns for them to set it up. In the meantime, I gust in an Electabuzz, but they drop a switch before I'm able to secure the KO. With the second Zapdos in play, my fighting types are ineffective. Jigglypuff softens it up, and Pikachu comes in for the KO. This puts me up 2 prizes, but Steve has a fully powered Zapdos on the bench and uses it to even up the game before it KOs itself with Thunder Recoil. Steve runs low on energy, allowing Jigglypuff to whittle away the 3rd Zapdos. Jolteon takes a revenge KO, then follows up with another KO on Machop. Pikachu takes a KO back and gives me the energy surge I need to power up Diglett on my bench. With 1 prize card on each side, Electabuzz has a chance to KO Pikachu with Thunder Punch. But if it flips tails, it'll deal 10 damage to itself, putting it in range of Mudslap. It all comes down to this. Attempt number 3 is the first time I see him bring out Electrode, but as is the recurring theme, drawing multiple copies of energy removal slows them down enough for me to run away with the game. After slogging through the first 2 opponents, things start looking up. Jack opens with Chansey into my Machop, and it quickly takes 80 damage. At some point they play a Scoop Up, but instead of healing Chansey, they return an Articuno to their hand, and then discard it with Professor Oak. The Poor Eye and a weakness to Pikachu ultimately ends up costing them the game. Rod is the final Grandmaster, and ironically, the weakest. Instead of a big basic, his ace is Dragonite, and he's running several other big expensive attackers alongside it. Pikachu makes short work of his Lapras with Knot and Thunder Jolt. A Charmander comes in, but his deck runs 0 fire energy, allowing me to proceed without fear of Ember. They end up retreating for Dratini, which I KO for free. Pikachu hits a triple before finally going down, at which point Diglett cleans up the weakened bench. But the journey doesn't end there. Much like in Red and Blue, we learn our rival has already become champion. Ronald's deck is a commentary by the developers meant to teach kids that shoving every high rarity card you own into one deck isn't a winning strategy. He goes from a relatively competent Haymaker deck to an incoherent mess that incorporates all 3 legendary birds and Dragonite. Players are meant to dispatch of him with little trouble, and the game ends with a message on how to improve at Pokémon. Instead, Ronald takes me out with the trash for nearly an hour, taking more attempts and with longer games than any other fight. So let's jump into the winning match. Machop puts pressure on a Dratini, causing a retreat into Moltres. I only opened fighting Pokemon, so I'm forced to use Gambler to find new cards. A lucky flip grabs Pikachu and a gust of wind, letting me set up and take an early KO. Pikachu chips away at Moltres, dodging several dive bombs just like in my match against Courtney. Then, channeling the power of Jack, Ronald uses Scoop Up on Articuno instead of their 10 HP Moltres, offering us another KO. Dragonair evens up the scoreboard by KOing 2 Pikachu, but Machop finishes it off. The second Dragonair whiffs Slam, providing a chance to use energy removal to slow it down. Ronald then gives up a guaranteed KO with Hyper Beam to deal another 0 damage with Slam later on. But they make up for it by perfectly expertly sniping my Diglett with Zapdos' Pokemon power. Machop and Jolteon trade blows, leaving me on my final prize. Ronald promotes a Zapdos, but runs out of energy, allowing Pikachu to finish it off and claim victory. Overall, this challenge was pretty fun, and I'd recommend it to anyone who wants a bit of variety from PTCGL. The deck is punchy and aggressive, and the low HP makes Potion a valuable asset, which you won't see anywhere else. I went into this thinking I'd roll over the entire game, using the power of 20 for 1, but several key trainers provided difficulty in just the right places. The MVP card is definitely energy removal, with several key battles being broken through only by being able to deny the opponent several turns worth of attachments. Thanks for watching.